Precision genomics is changing medicine. It saves countless lives already in cancer and population genetics. But what exactly is precision medicine? And why does it need to be decentralized? That's the question we are going to look into today. Now first, let's look into why genomics is changing medicine. The cost reduction of whole genome sequencing, which is an indication for how much sequencing and genomic testing costs, has been 99%. That's crazy. Think about it. Over 99%. This massive reduction in costs has led to also a massive increase in the adoption of clinical biomarkers or genomic biomarkers in clinical trials, which means it has unlocked a tremendous effort on the scientific side to understand the human genome and to understand how insights into genomics can save us from death. And we also see that there are already tremendous advances being made in the treatment of disease. Here you see just one example in multiple cancer types, targeted therapies that are based on genomic markers of the tumor and how it's being made up, how the mutational makeup of the tumor looks like, can increase life expectancy of cancer patients by 2.5x. I just looked at some numbers, so instead of an average survival rate of 12 months of that cancer, you're looking at 30, 40 months average. And what that means is that some people literally get saved and they live for a very long time after they get cancer. We have seen over 500 FDA-approved genomic therapies already out in the market. And that's just in the last, couple of decades. The publication rate increased over 50% in the last decade. So there's tremendous change coming because of genomics, because this is the book of life, as we say. Right? The genomics encode all your proteins, everything your body is made up of is encoded in your genome. And by understanding the genome, we understand each individual patient much better. But we also understand genomic diseases like cancer much better, which allows us to attack and defeat these diseases with a much higher rate of success. Now, while this is all amazing technologically and medically, there's a problem in genomics. And that is that the current genomics industry is actually failing economically. And that translates into failing medically. I call this industry right now centralized genomics because it's built around the model that you build specialized, complicated tests, build a single lab in the world, and then all patients and doctors have to send the tests into that lab. That is why it's centralized. Now, 90% of publicly traded genomics companies involved in genetic testing are currently unprofitable. Not just that, they are structurally unprofitable, which means they have no way of ever making money. And that was fine when Wall Street and Silicon Valley threw all the capital at them, but this era has ended for many reasons. Fed rates, high interest rates, and their stock prices have plummeted 90% and more. In 2024 and 5, we will see a reckoning because of that will tear gaps into the genomic testing landscape, which means patients will not be able to get the tests they need. And there will be a massive shift in supply chain. And I always say, while in medicine we don't want to talk about money too much, but if you don't have profitability in an industry, this industry will cease to exist. And if an industry like genomics ceases to exist or experiences major economic disruptions, that is bad for patients because they will get the genomic testing they need even less. And even before that reckoning in the next 2 years, due to that economic problem or the structural unprofitability of that business model that we currently have, even before that, 87% of US cancer patients already don't get the genomic testing they need based on guidelines because they either never get tested or the tests don't arrive in time to apply the right targeted therapy. That is horrible. We are talking about thousands, tens of thousands of cancer patients who die today despite having targeted therapies who could save their lives because their oncologists cannot get the tests in time or do not understand which tests to order. All of that is due to the centralized genomics business model that is failing and leads to massive shortcomings on deltas between what is possible today and what is being done today. That is an absolutely unnecessary delta. If something is possible and it is reimbursed and it is already a guideline for doctors, there is no reason, or there should be no reason, why patients still die and don't get this testing they need. That is just the United States numbers. Worldwide, the situation, of course, is not better. It might be even worse. Now, the solution to that is what I call the decentralization of genomics. And the decentralization revolutionizes access to genomics, which is the biggest problem. It is not technological progress that is not happening. No, it is access to the progress that already has happened and that is available today. By decentralizing genomics and creating turnkey solutions for hospitals to have genomics inside the system, we will see the biggest disruption in genomic care and precision medicine that ever happened in history. And it might sound weird or boring, for people who expect more science here, but this is not a science problem. It's an economics and an infrastructure problem. Decentralization leads to 3 times faster turnaround times, which is key in cancer care, for example, because cancer patients need the genomic testing they need in time. If they jump on, double platinum treatments or other chemotherapies because they have to start treatment, because the results are not in for potential targeted therapies, you can't go back. It's called first-line treatments. Once you miss the first-line treatment opportunity, it's very hard to pivot because you create too much damage and mutations in the tumor. So your original testing doesn't apply anymore. So you need fast turnaround times, which is impossible in the centralized model. 90% of patients can now get results in time, as opposed to previously 18 or 17% of patients are getting the results in time. And that means 95% of patients can now be covered with precision and targeted therapies. And you remember how bad that number was, or currently is in the centralized model. So creating this decentralized install base is really the key to making genomics happen. Decentralized genomics, bring it inside hospitals and create cloud-connected genomic excellence, which means now hospitals become the real purveyors and executors of genomic medicine, instead of some centralized lab far away from the oncologist and patient. While this is incredibly important, it's also important to understand that we currently are in a Goldilocks moment for making decentralized genomics happen, right? Because decentralized genomics cannot happen when hospitals are happy and don't have much to do and they're not under profit pressure, because then they have less incentive to act, right? And what happens right now is that hospitals are under tremendous pressure, and pressure creates change. Over half of hospitals lose money today. We also saw a 50% drop in operating margins since 2019 because of the pandemic and some other effects. So hospitals are under tremendous economics pressure, which makes them more open to new revenue streams and new profit opportunities, like bringing genomics inside. And again, I have to apologize to bring economics into the life-saving care here, but let's not kid ourselves. If you don't have economic incentives, you cannot create change in healthcare. And so this is very good that hospitals are under pressure. It makes them more open-minded for creating change and changing the ways and getting more revenue streams in. But besides that, another very important piece of the equation is that, since 2020, very important things have happened in genomic kitting and distributed solutions. So genomics is a very complicated thing. It's not like a single little test you do. You have to build a whole high complexity sequencing lab inside a hospital. And that lab has to then run certain what's called kits and cloud systems for each individual application of genomics. For example, complete genomic profiling of tumor tissue. You need specific kits, specific chemistries, specific machines, and specific bioinformatics clouds and stacks on top of it to deliver the exact results that oncologists and patients need for the specific application. And in 2020, as little as 3 years ago, all of that decentralized genomics wasn't even possible. We didn't have the technology. We couldn't decentralize these super complicated labs effectively into hospitals. But what has happened, thanks to dramatic improvements in technology is that both on the hardware side, on the chemistry side, on the cloud side, and on the regulatory side, we have seen tremendous progress over these last few years. And that makes it all possible to actually decentralize genomics and bring it into hospitals. What's also important is that the decentralization of genomics catalyzes genomic innovation. Why? Because if you have centralized genomics and you have thousands of hospitals that are disconnected with a source of data and the source of excellence in genomics, the care integration with the genomics data will never really happen because too many parties are involved. There are firewalls between the patient data and so on and so forth. Now here, you create a real engine of change, what I call a data transformation vector. And that vector sits inside the hospital and it's driven by profitability. The hospital now has a real incentive of getting genomic testing up and running because every test that is being applied to a patient actually makes the hospital money. That is important because it creates an incentive for an organization to really push guideline-based medical care to patients proactively. Also, the fast turnaround times that come with being on site create a massive incentive medically to really make genomics a top priority now. Because the frustration of oncologists right now is that they order the testing, doesn't come in time, they go through all the efforts of getting insurance approval, going through the patient case, then they wait, have to start therapy, results comes in, and they can't do anything. That creates a lot of frustration, and then they drop the ball and they stop ordering testing. All of that changes once we decentralize. And all of that can happen within 9 months or less from the hospital making the decision to bring it inside. That's how much this technology has evolved. And all of that leads on a macro level now to genomics penetration into patient populations decades faster than in a centralized model. It creates a precision medicine operating system, right, where these turnkey inside a laboratory solutions now create an operating system and install base that runs rapid and fast genomics next to the patients everywhere and manage the data inside the hospital. And that allows then specialized and centralized test developers to deploy their new cutting-edge genomics tests much faster because they don't have to build a lab and create a new sales force to explain these new tests to hundreds of thousands of doctors, but they can just go to these new install bases into this new operating system, talk to a partner there, and deploy their specialty test across the entire install base without a sales force, without convincing all these oncologists. So it just is a massive game changer in how genomics is being delivered. Another super important point, while I believe decentralized genomics is an absolute game changer for medicine, is that it unlocks large-scale medical artificial intelligence. And let me explain quickly why that is. The average patient file in an electronic medical record is 217,000 data points. That was a Nature study that just figured that out last year. That is great, but once you introduce genomics into a system, a whole exome, for example, introduces 30 million data points for each patient. That is a 130x data expansion in size through genomics per patient. Now, why is this so important? Now, it's important because put yourself into the shoes of a hospital and you're sitting on these 217,000 data points per patient for, a decade now. And there are lots of problems in how this data is being used. It's not being used effectively. And you have all these little initiatives here and there on your data and say like, okay, let's unlock that patient data, introduce more AI and figure out more. But you're not really motivated, right? There's like 217,000 data points. It's not that much. And you don't have the cloud systems in place, so everything is a little annoying. Now let's assume you bring decentralized genomics inside. And suddenly you have a center of excellence that deals with patient data on a massively different scale. 130 times the size of your current data. That center of excellence, which by the way is fully funded through the genomics revenue stream and profitability mechanics, now creates data excellence in that hospital without any expense, in fact, by producing money. So as a side effect, now you have this center of excellence that becomes very, very good in handling much, much larger sets of data that is also much more digital. And that expertise becomes a transformation vector for the hospital. Because now there's not big investments necessary anymore because it comes with the genomics. And all the hospital has to do is integrate their longitudinal medical records into the genomics data lakes. So it becomes a different effort from something that happens automatically and you're getting paid for, whereas before it was a diffuse project you didn't know how to handle and that costs you money. And that leads to a massive unlock for large-scale medical data, which then is an automatic unlock for medical AI. And so, come to the last point, why decentralized genomics is such a game changer. I believe hospitals will blueprint the future of genomic medicine. And the emphasis here is hospitals, not biotech companies and not genomics companies. Because the future of genomics has to happen around the patient. It has to happen synchronized with other medical records and patient data. And it has to happen driven by the actual primary care, OBGYN, oncologists and internists, by all the medical disciplines who actually manage cases and patients. Only if they become an intrinsic part of genomic medicine can genomic medicine take it to the next level. And that all can only happen once we bring this inside hospitals. Now, there are roughly 1,000 hospitals globally who are large enough to actually bring genomics inside. They cover roughly 1 billion patients. And we estimate that by doing so, the average life expectancy of patients goes up 10 years. That is through cures and targeted therapies, but maybe most importantly, through life extension effects of precision preventative medicine that comes with advanced genomics in populations. So by implementing that into the top 1 billion and top 1,000 hospitals globally, these 1,000 hospitals become the new centers of medical intelligence, the new drivers of medical intelligence. It will lead to a massive disruption and reshuffling of the pecking order of hospitals. The hospitals who bring in decentralized genomics will take the lead in value-based care, in medical intelligence, and in outcomes. They will create an incentive and a vortex of excellence that will suck in the rest, and they will be the pioneers who will own the future of medicine. So I'm very bullish on what's going to happen in the next 10 years. I think there's a major disruption coming to medical care, to medical intelligence, to precision medicine. And this disruption will be driven by decentralized genomics that brings genomic excellence right into the hospitals where it matters most.